Hi everyone, welcome again to the McLean Hospital Borderline Personality Disorder Family and Consumer Education Webinar Series. My name is Chris Palmer. I'm a psychiatrist here at McLean, and on behalf of the hospital and Harvard Medical School, it's my pleasure to welcome you today. Today we're joined by two individuals affected by borderline personality disorder who are very brave and bold and are going to share their experience of having borderline personality disorder and a mental illness with you. They have been even braver and bolder and participated in the McLean Hospital Deconstructing Stigma campaign. So if you haven't heard about this, you'll hear more about it during our webinar. But they have been very public, and I really want to commend them and applaud their bravery and their courage to help other people and to really decrease the stigma and shame of having an illness that requires help and treatment. Before we get started, a few logistical announcements. All of your names are hidden from others and your microphones are muted, but we do want to take your questions. And so in the lower right-hand corner of your screen, you'll see a Q&A box, and if you have questions for our speakers today or for the webinar series in general, feel free to type them in. If you've come with a specific question in mind, you can type it in now and we'll put it in queue and get through as many of them as we can. In the lower left-hand corner of your screen, you'll see links to several websites. The first one is a link to the initiative website, and you can see all of our recordings there. This webinar will be there at some point in the next few days. The next three links are national resources around borderline personality disorder. You can get more information on those links. You can also potentially get referrals for clinicians who treat borderline personality disorder in your area. And then finally, I want to just acknowledge that this webinar series is possible through a generous philanthropic gift from a family who is also affected by borderline personality disorder. And we would love to be able to continue this webinar series indefinitely, but will require additional support. So if you're in a position to be able to help support these webinars, we ask you to click on the link to support these webinars, and any gift, large or small, would really help out a lot. And so now it's my pleasure to welcome to the webinar both Megan and Claire, and they are going to share their experiences of having borderline personality disorder.
Thank you for that introduction. I'm Megan. I'm Claire. I am 28 years old. I nanny for 5 wonderful little girls. And I guess we'll just get right to it.
Why not, right?
Yeah. So my first memory in relation to mental illness was in elementary school. I had my first anxiety attack, so bad that my teacher called 911 thinking I was going into cardiac arrest, was rushed to the hospital where my parents met us, and the doctor told them that I was having an anxiety attack. And I think they just kind of, at the time, brushed it off as me being a kid. I was difficult to begin with. So from there, it kind of got a little bit worse. I really struggled every day getting into school. I can remember being super embarrassed, showing up late. You could tell I'd been crying. My face was red. I just really struggled getting to school every day. I was living in the nurse's office. I was lucky enough to have an amazing nurse who we became really close. She would pick me up on the days my parents couldn't get me to school just to get me out of the house. I wouldn't even go to classes on those days. I would do my work in her office, again, just to get me out of the house. I can remember really struggling regulating my emotions, especially sadness and anger. I would get so mad at my siblings for doing silly things and would act out. And I can remember being sad for no reason, and I can remember wanting a reason to be sad so I could tell people why I was sad, and I didn't have one. And then from there, I started realizing that things that people do every day without a second thought were so incredibly hard for me. I struggled going to the candy store with my friends because the interaction but the clerk would just make me so nervous that I stopped doing stuff because I didn't want that feeling anymore. So I would back out of plans. I would stop responding to people and just not show up to stuff. Then in college, I started self-medicating. I got put on an antidepressant for the first time. So I was drinking and taking an antidepressant, which is not very good. And I kind of started this awful cycle of drinking, and then I'd have anxiety the next morning. And so I'd drink again to get rid of the anxiety. And it was just a really bad point to put myself in. It's hard to get out of that when you're drinking to get rid of your anxiety, but in reality it makes it a lot worse. Then post-college, I had my first real relationship breakup, and this was the first real sense of abandonment that I felt, and it took over my entire life. I couldn't think about anything but how he left me and what did I do wrong and what's wrong with me. I was living at my parents' house, and there were days on end where I couldn't leave the couch. I'd just sit there and cry, and I saw no way out of it. I was put on a stronger medication after that. Wasn't really doing therapy, just kind of taking the pills and hoping they'd work. Then when I was 23, I had my first suicide attempt. In fact, that year I had 2 suicide attempts. I was hospitalized for both of them. I kind of went through the motions of what the doctors wanted me to do, told them what they wanted to hear just so I could get out. I didn't want to be there. I was diagnosed with borderline personality disorder shortly after that, and I told no one except my parents. I was extremely embarrassed, and I kind of kept it from everybody. Then from there, I was so miserable inside that I wanted everyone else to feel as miserable as I did. So I was destroying relationships. I lost a lot of my friends, and I pushed away everyone kind of as a coping mechanism to not feel that abandonment that I'd felt before, when in reality, I was doing exactly just that. I was forcing people to not want to be there and, in a sense, abandon me when I really needed them. I hated myself. Again, like I've said, abandonment is one of my triggers, is what sends me into a really bad depression. I hit rock bottom. As I said, I lost most of my friends, and I had another big relationship breakup. The guy I thought I was going to marry, and I just was in one of the deepest depressive moments of my life. And not long after that, and 2 years ago, Easter, I was really, really struggling. It was again after that breakup, and my family was texting me, "Are you coming to dinner?" And I rolled out of bed and went for 5 minutes, sat on the couch, and I was just so overwhelmed by this feeling of hatred for myself and just not seeing a way out. I got up, left, didn't say goodbye to anyone. My brother was texting me, asking me what's wrong, and I just responded with something I think along the lines of, "I'm sorry, I can't do this anymore, and I love you." And they had known I was struggling, so my mom, my sister, my brother, and dad came to my apartment, which I had barricaded myself in, somehow got in, and I remember opening my eyes and seeing my sister, who at that time I had very little, if not any, relationship with, and just that look of fear in her eyes, and she was screaming at my parents to call 911. And I again was taken to the hospital, and once again, you'll notice a pattern. I went through the steps that they wanted me to, simply just to get home. Then a couple months after, again, super depressed. I didn't do anything about it, so my depression just kept getting worse and worse. For the first time, I wrote my parents a suicide letter, and I left work screaming and crying, which I'd been doing for months. And I finally, all of a sudden, had like a come-to moment. Pictures of the little girls that I watched flashed in my mind, my family, especially that look on my sister's face when they found me, and I just all of a sudden was like, oh my gosh, I can't continue doing this. Like, I need to change. I need to start going and getting help because I want to do it, not because I'm trying to make everyone else happy, but I want to do it because I want to be happy. And I have an amazing doctor who we work together, and I finally found a medicine that works for me. And medicine is a part of it, but it's tough. It's tough finding the right medicine, and it takes a while. But the medicine is only one part of it. You also have to learn the tools so that when you are struggling and when you're in those really low places, you're able to work on it. And I still struggle. I'm sure.
Obviously.
Yeah. And we're going to struggle the rest of our lives, but I now know coping mechanisms and tools on how to help myself when I'm in those dark places. And people with BPD do have a little bit more trouble being happy, but it is possible, and we're sitting here as proof of that. So,
some days are obviously better than others.
Right.
But
yeah.
they say that people with BPD experience every emotion with so much intensity. So when we're sad, we're devastated, but when we're happy, we're elated, with joy. We have a lot of gratitude for other people's actions and gestures towards us. So, thank you.
Your turn.
My turn. Well, I'm a little more of like an off-the-cuff speaker. You're very prepared, but even then it was still emotional and personal, so I liked it. So my history with mental illness, I guess as long as I can remember, growing up as a kid, I have some vague memory of I was like on the playground or something, and must have been kindergarten, first grade, and just kind of looking around and feeling very alone almost, like there was, a playground full of kids, and you just felt so sad, and you just felt different and misunderstood. And I just think that's kind of been a recurring theme in my life, is just there's something different. I always could tell there was something different about me, but I could never really put my finger on it. So I think a lot of my struggles I kept inside, whereas I don't want to say this, but the way I was raised, it was, don't show any emotion. Children should be seen and not heard. And, I would get upset and I would get punished for being upset. So if I was feeling, depressed or anxious at school, or, got so nervous before school, I threw up, that definitely happened.
You get in trouble.
Yeah, I'd get in trouble. So I just kept it all inside. I never acted out, because if I acted out, I would go home and I'd get in trouble. So I think that just kind of snowballed, kind of went into a cycle where I was distressed, but I couldn't speak out about it, so I just internalized a lot of it. I think, going into, I guess, preteen years, adolescence, a lot of my behavior was written off as, oh, she'll grow out of it, or I just remember my mom saying once to my dad, oh, she's just at that age. But at that age was definitely, I struggled, crying all the time, throwing tantrums at an inappropriate age, and, destroying the door in my bedroom. And
we still have a hole in one of our doors from throwing a shoe at it. I would get so angry, and they would, I think it's the same, kind of wrote it off as, oh, it's just the age, and
but it wasn't.
Right. And I think it is tough to differentiate what the difference is.
Yeah, it's not like I blame, we can't sit here all day and, blame our parents for everything, or our upbringing, or coulda, woulda, shoulda, but I guess we'll get to that later. So, childhood was definitely difficult. I just remember acting out a lot and then getting punished for acting out, or saying I wasn't allowed to be upset, or, going in timeout, crying, screaming, and then getting more time because you were upset. Yeah, for hours on end. And then I guess everything is just kind of, it feels like one giant struggle episode. I remember I made my first suicide attempt at age 11, and my parents, I don't remember how they found out, but my mom got really upset and was crying. I don't remember what else happened. But then I went to school the next day. Nothing happened. They were just really upset. And I'm pretty sure that maybe I made another one around that time. I don't remember. But I think that was just like a turning point, and I just I always struggled. There was always something different about me. And then I think maybe a year or two later, they finally realized, oh, there's something not right with her. Maybe she should talk to someone. And, that's when I met my psychiatrist I had for 16 years until he retired. So, but that, it's just tough as a kid because the whole thing, you can't act out in the back of your mind. So you're a kid, whatever you tell your counselor, psychiatrist, therapist, they're going to inform your parents. So I didn't really utilize it the way I would as an adult now where, there's the confidentiality. Right. So I still struggled, and then they put me on meds, and then, of course, as a kid, you throw a tantrum. I don't want to do that, and you don't want to do anything what your parents tell you to. So I pretty much just threw tantrums until I didn't have to take them, even though they helped, probably. I mean, I can't really remember. Teenage years, my mom died when I was 13, so that was definitely tough, well, obviously. And then I was pretty much felt on my own through a lot of my teenage years, was really responsible for, getting myself up to school even though I didn't want to go, and I was depressed most days, and actually probably like all days, anxious all the time. It's just really hard, and sometimes I don't even know how I got up and did it. Like, looking back, I feel like I was crying out, and I wish somebody had noticed, but nobody really did. And that's no one else's fault.
You become really good at hiding it.
Yeah, that's pretty much what all this is. I had to hide it. I wasn't allowed, to be mentally ill, or, what have you. Your family wants to hold you up to these high standards, and you get good grades, and, you got to go to college, you got to, marriage, kids, white picket fence, and that's always in the back of your mind, living up to these expectations that, I might have to achieve in a different way because of just how I am.
A little different.
What?
We're a little different.
Just a little.
Yeah.
In a good way.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so college, high school, more of the same. It just feels like a lot of hiding my depression, getting really good at it so people think there's nothing wrong. But then I guess, going on what you say, I didn't mean to laugh when you were saying the whole, abandonment, my first...
Oh, no, but it is, yeah.
Because it's just that is so true. I just remember, I can almost, kind of pinpoint when this, my BPD symptoms kind of
really emerged.
Emerged. It's probably my early 20s. So it was a certain relationship I had. It was just, I felt so out of control all the time with every interaction. And it's almost like something was taking over my body that I knew it was wrong, and I knew, well, not wrong, but I knew it wasn't the appropriate way to react. And I knew that it was like a seizure, like something inhabited your body that you couldn't control, and it felt so awful, but you felt like there was nothing you could do to stop it. It was like, every minute was, I'm going to be abandoned, or every interaction you're thinking, well, this is the last time I'm ever going to see them, so I better make it count. And it just ended really badly with, the police getting called on me once. It's just a really bad time in my life, and that just kind of began a whole string of, inpatient hospitalizations, outpatient programs, partial hospitals, IOPs, numerous suicide attempts.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to laugh to make it funny, but it's just...
No, yeah.
It's just so much.
Yeah.
And some of them were a lot worse than others. I ended up in the hospital, the medical portion of it for some of them. And it's just it's pretty awful.
I can remember waking up after one of the suicide attempts, and I was just so angry at myself for feeling like I failed again at something. And just feeling like I couldn't do it. I can't even do this right. How am I going to be able to live this life where I can't even do something that in my head was supposed to be so easy?
Or mine is more so I want to say embarrassed.
Oh, yeah.
Just not necessarily, oh, I failed. It's
right.
Really, it's really clear that was pathetic, and then it just kind of...
You keep doing it.
Snowballed.
Yeah.
And it was just, So my last inpatient, so the last time I was here was about 2 years ago. So, I mean, I hate to say, like, oh, thank God, because it's beautiful.
No, but yeah.
But, I mean, it's just, yeah, staying out of the hospital right now is probably a good, realistic goal for me to have. But, you know, you still struggle.
Right, and it is okay to still struggle.
I think I have trouble accepting that.
Yeah.
You know, and, yeah, because, you know, we're here doing all this, you know, our pictures are at Logan Airport, and, you know.
And on your bad days, you kind of are like,
people are looking to you as a source of, oh, she's so far along in her recovery.
But it
why
is
can't I
important
be like that?
to tell them that you are still going to have days that you struggle, because that's what is going to happen. But like I said, you learn the tools and figure out ways that work for you, because everyone's different and everyone has different coping mechanisms, different types of medicine, but you do figure out what works for you. And as again, like we said, you're still going to have bad days, but you now know how to deal with those days.
Yeah. It's just, I wish there was a magic bullet, a magic pill. Everybody says that, you know, when people want to talk about, you know, an exercise plan or whatever, it's like there's no magic bullet. It's not going to happen overnight.
No.
Just, I've noticed even a little difference, you know, but that's taken me 7 years of recovery. And it's just unfortunate because we're all about, like, impulse in the moment. What can I do right now? And that's just not how recovery works.
Right. So, should we talk about the campaign?
I guess so. I think I kind of touched on it a little bit. As far as the campaign, I'm not on Facebook anymore, which actually is a good maybe skill for people with BPD because it's actually helped me.
Yeah.
I can't explain it. But I found the campaign through Facebook. That's why I mentioned that. It was some kind of maybe like an ad on the page, and then I'm just like, I don't even know why I did it. I think it's because I'm just so sick and tired of not feeling like I am able to speak out about a chronic illness like mental illness. You know, as I said, I think in my interview that's, you know, plastered right there in Logan Airport, you know, we can have things like the ALS Ice Bucket Challenge that go viral, and, you know, thank God, you know, they actually legitimately found some kind of gene that they can, you know, use to do more research directly through that money raised. You know, you can do, what is it, this diabetes walk, there's, you know, the breast cancer thing, Relay for Life. Those are all acceptable, right? Because they're, I don't want to say visible illnesses, but they're tangible. You know, cancer, ALS, you know, diabetes, they're seem to have numbers attached to them, whereas mental illness is just not really tangible.
Right.
It's invisible.
Have trouble understanding.
So why the hell can't I say anything about my struggles while I'm reading everybody else? You know, my cousin, my aunt, myself, I have this, raising money, and it's just, well, I'm sick of struggling in silence. Like, I've been this way my whole life. Might as well do it now. Why the hell not? This is a great opportunity. So they messaged me, and I guess the rest is history. They took some pretty cool pictures outside where I live by the beach. So I liked that quite a bit.
Can you two describe a little bit about what the Deconstructing Stigma campaign is? Because I think some people maybe don't know.
Sure.
So if you could give like a broad overview of what it is.
Sure. So they photographed and interviewed, I think it was 32 individuals, some famous people, some not famous people, and it launched at Logan this past winter. It was in one of the connector hallways, these big posters of us with a brief story about our mental illness. There's also a website for it.
Like a coffee table, I have it in my apartment now.
And
it's just kind of, the whole title, Deconstructing Stigma, so kind of challenge your viewpoint on what mental illness means. Why is it so taboo to speak about?
Right.
So it's 1 in 5 Americans, 4 sometimes?
1 in 5, yeah.
It's, I mean, why wouldn't you want to speak about it? Yet if it affects that many people, you know, your cousin, your brother, your sister, you know, your neighbor down the street, the guy who, you know, sells you your candy bar every day.
Yep.
If it affects that many people, why are we still so ashamed to talk about it?
So mine was kind of different. I had a reason for doing it. unfortunately 2 summers ago, I think it was, this was after I'd started intense therapy, the new medicine, and I was actually working on myself. One of my friend's little brothers unfortunately committed suicide. He was just out of high school. My father and I drove up to the funeral, and just looking around at all these people that he had no idea loved him so much, and he had no idea the impact on these people's lives he had, and that all these people's lives would never be the same because he's no longer here. My dad and I we looked at each other at one point, and we were both just tears streaming down our faces, and had the same thought that, this could have been my friends, and this could have been my family, this could have been my funeral. And it was kind of right then and there that I realized, I have to start talking about this. I need to get out there so that on the ride home, all I could think about was his last few moments, and that helplessness and the feeling like there's nothing you can do and just you don't want to be alive anymore. I couldn't stop thinking about it, and I've been there, so I know how awful that is. And I said to myself right then and there, I need to start talking about this. I don't want people to suffer in silence any longer. It's not something to be embarrassed of. In fact, I'm incredibly proud of how strong we both are waking up every day, and your first thought is, how am I going to get through today? And constantly fighting with your brain is an extremely difficult thing to do. So anyone living with a mental illness is so strong. Like she said, 1 in 5 Americans have mental illness. So for so long, I thought that I was alone, when in reality, there's a lot of people out there that are feeling the same way as you. For so long, I kept, like you said, a secret. I kind of put up this whole facade that I was living this great life, and I was super happy, when in reality, inside, I felt like I was dying. And then after the campaign launched that night at Logan, I was a little nervous about telling my friends at first that I had BPD, and I think that's because the stigma surrounding it is so great, and I think it's because the lack of education on borderline personality disorder. You kind of briefly touched on this, but
yeah, lots of misinformation.
The best way I describe it to people is that we lack an emotional layer of skin. So when things happen to us, we have nothing there protecting us. It hits us so hard. Like she said, the sadness is so deep, but the happiness is also so happy.
Like every emotion is turned up. I mean,
right.
Nobody has the dials anymore, but it's like 0 to the highest 10.
Insane.
Baffling. It's like no emotion is
right.
Average. We do everything.
Yeah.
All the time.
Yeah. And then so my worry about telling my friends was completely unnecessary, because after the launch of the campaign, one of my girlfriends asked me to meet to celebrate after, and I got there, and they'd thrown the surprise party.
To work after.
Just like, I was like sobbing, but just to show how proud they were of me. And I kind of had the same thought with my extended family members. None of us had really talked about it. Like, when the stuff happened, it was kind of just swept under the rug, and no one talked about it. And that's kind of where the issue is we kept all these secrets for so long. And that's the big problem with mental illness, is that we're keeping all of this stuff a secret when it's something that it needs to be talked about. So in my family, again, same thing. No need to be as worried as I was. I did an interview after promoting the campaign, and all of my aunts and uncles, my cousins texting me, saying how proud they were of me, some of them even saying, I've struggled too, thank you for doing this. And then the same with social media. I posted a lot of it to Facebook, and
Me too, when I had it.
But the feedback was just
interesting.
I had so many people sending me messages saying, that's exactly how I feel, and you know what, I've felt like that my whole life, and I've always been scared to talk about it. And it's crazy, actually, looking back at the people that sent me those messages are now the people that are openly posting about it, which is amazing what people talking about it does. It makes, this sounds kind of bad, I guess, but it's nice to know that you're not alone in the struggle.
It's not bad. It's just someone said to me when I did this campaign, and then I found out the day that, they did all the press junkets and were posting it up, had the same reaction I had before I came to this webinar. I was just, I'm not okay with this. I shouldn't have done that. Why did I do that?
Yeah.
I regretted it immediately. Instant panic in the middle of Primark at the mall. I don't know why I was there. Got it on my phone, and I'm just freaking out. I said, can I take it back?
Yeah.
And someone said to me, if you even helped one person change their mind or helped them, then you did your job.
Yeah.
And I feel that's true. And all the responses, like posting it when I had Facebook, maybe I'll go back, I don't know. The responses from people I knew were supportive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I only got one person that wasn't.
A troll.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. But I mean, in doing this has been a form of therapy in itself. I had the opportunity to go and speak at a children's hospital in their psych ward and be able to look at them and say, you know what, I've sat in that chair and I've been in that crappy place that you're in right now more times than I can count, and to be able to tell them, it does get better, but you have to work on it. I left and I just sat in my car and cried, just seeing the looks on these kids' faces, oh my God, you can actually get out of this. Give them a little bit of
do that when I was
a little bit of hope
age.
To see. Yeah, it was pretty amazing, and I felt. I feel like I cry all the time now, but it's happy.
The feel.
Yeah. It's I was just so happy to be able to maybe give these kids a little glimmer of hope so that they start working towards bettering themselves.
Yeah, and also for the campaign, I think the most interesting responses I got, I remember several of these specifically after I posted, oh, I'm so honored, and here's my picture, it's bigger than Brandon Marshall's.
Yeah.
So exciting.
Our 15 seconds is...
I know. He can continue on. He's injured, though.
Yeah.
Pulling for you. Anyway, the most interesting response I think I got from several people was, wow, I never knew.
Yeah.
And I'm like, isn't that kind of the point?
Yep.
What we just spoke about.
All the time. Looking at you, you would never have any idea.
Yeah, and they looked at me like, I never knew, honey. And I was like, that's why we speak out. It's because walking down the street, I just look like your average 29-year-old girl from Boston or whatever. But inside we're struggling with an invisible illness, a mental illness.
So one of the things I'm wondering if you can speak to, and it's going to sound like a negative question, but I imagine a lot of people have the concern oh my gosh, I wouldn't want my daughter in this case. I wouldn't want my daughter to out herself on this. She'll never get a job.
I had that.
Her friends will abandon her. People will be walking on eggshells around her.
Yeah.
And so I'm wondering if you could speak to at least that fear or concern. Did any of that come true?
I mean, it is a valid concern. And what I would say to the people who they're afraid their friends are going to leave them, then you know what? They're not your real friends. I actually did lose quite a bit of my friends at the time. And if they can't be there for you in your hardest times, then they shouldn't be there for the good times. And you are going to come across people who don't understand mental illness. I, again, have been fortunate enough that my employers have been really open about it. A lot of people I've gotten, well, who would leave their kids with you? And the parents have said to me, well, we see that you love our kids just as much as we love them. And I think it's through showing I am extremely compassionate because of having borderline personality disorder. I have become such a better person. I understand what it feels like to feel so crappy about yourself that I no longer want anyone to feel like that. I think it's made me incredibly strong.
Yeah, that's why I chose to, I mentor a teenage girl, and I try to foster little sister type relationships with old boyfriend sisters and things like that, just to kind of put myself out there to someone who I could have used when I was their age.
Right. And NAMI has been, is that how you pronounce it?
Mm-hmm.
NAMI? Actually has started an initiative where they train CEOs in mental health awareness. So it is out there, and people are being hired that have mental illnesses.
And I do remember I got responses like that from family,
Mm-hmm.
In terms of, well, good thing you got the job before,
Right, you did this.
They did this, and posted this everywhere else, you wouldn't have gotten it.
Yep.
And it's just like, yeah, that sucks in the moment, but do you really want to work for an employer who isn't very open to working with people with, in my field, lived experience?
Yeah.
And so let me ask the follow-up question, which is, I think, and both of you kind of alluded to this, but I want to just be more specific about it. Because I imagine, there are so many things, human experiences, sexual orientation is one that comes to mind, that are also hidden.
Yep.
And a lot of times when people actually come out, there are repercussions about coming out because people may not accept it, they may have a different viewpoint, they might not like it, they may be closed-minded, but there are also, for so many people, kind of a vastly greater number of advantages to finally being open and free and being able to be yourself and being able to let people know, like, today's just not a good day for me.
Yeah.
And in the context of my having borderline personality disorder, please don't underestimate that statement. Like, today's not a good day for me. Or I'm having anxiety. And please don't brush it off and just say, oh yeah, I have anxiety too, and everybody has, that I'm sharing this information with you so that we can be closer, so that you can understand me, and I don't have to hide from you, and I don't have to pretend with you,
Right.
and I can be like my authentic self with you.
Weightlifted.
And you can be your authentic self with me.
If you tell the truth, you don't have to remember anything.
Yep.
Yeah. So I asked that, and I kind of proposed it, but I'm wondering, have you experienced anything along those lines of just feeling like the relationships that did survive, you kind of disclosing this information, that those relationships are maybe even better?
Oh, yeah.
And maybe in some cases dramatically better because people understand something about you that they never knew before.
Yep, and I think it kind of opens them up to being, like you said, a lot more open themselves. Since I've been doing this, I now get a lot of people who just come and vent to me.
Me too.
I've gotten really good at just listening, just sitting there and being able to listen to people and knowing that I'm not going to judge what they're telling me. I'm not going to go and turn around and tell everyone else what they're saying. Yeah.
Yeah, and I've had people, one person who I reconnected with from high school, and she sought me out specifically and said, hey, I know you're very open about having mental illness. I need help, finding outpatient programs for my friend's daughter.
If you
and
still
I
have
almost
Facebook,
cried.
it's insane.
Well, it was when I had Facebook.
Well, that's what I'm saying is I get a lot now.
It touched me so much.
Yeah.
That, like,
They trusted you.
Because I spoke out about this, it's now making someone feel comfortable to ask someone who's in the know for help because we've been through it.
Yep.
And
Anytime.
a lot. But in terms of like close relationships and friends, I mean, I don't know if I can say one way or the other if they improved or not. I just think people are more proud of me, but in my personal life, I still struggle with saying those things. Like, hey, today's not a good day, because if it's not a good couple days in a row, it's like, oh, well, fear of abandonment. Like, they don't want to deal with someone who's struggling. So I do keep a lot of stuff hidden still. But speaking out, I guess it's more speaks to like my altruistic side because it's, I want other people to feel better. But in terms of the people I'm close with, I still struggle with wanting to open up, because
That's
I
probably
feel like
your childhood.
yeah, I feel like every time I want to open up, someone changes the subject.
Yeah, right.
Or they get uncomfortable.
Or well, people
or
say,
they just laugh it off or something.
a lot of times I've noticed since the campaign, they'll be like, oh God, this day, I wish it was over, I want to kill myself. And then they're like, oh, I'm sorry, like I didn't mean it like that. And I don't get it, like,
no.
You don't have to walk on eggshells. That's exactly why we're doing this.
We walk
like,
on eggshells enough around
yeah,
ourselves and
yeah,
our own
so,
emotions. So,
yeah, I've got that a lot since the campaign launched. And I kind of just like laugh every time. I'm like, don't worry.
no, I mean,
You don't
not
have
a
to-
lot of stuff like that offends me. I mean, I use my own gallows humor, but like
Yeah.
I said to someone the other day, if you want to make those jokes, it's different if you're on the gallows yourself as opposed
Right,
to one
right.
putting
I can make fun of
someone
myself.
there.
Yeah.
You know, I've made jokes about like my eating disorder.
Yeah.
I was like, that's not funny. I'm like,
I can
to me it
imagine.
is
Yeah.
because it's how I cope.
Yeah.
You know, I'm an aspiring stand-up comic. I want to make people laugh because it makes me feel better about myself
Right.
and my own issues if I can just laugh them off, at least in the moment. I mean, I'm still dealing with them. But
Yeah, exactly.
yeah.
So one other question I have for you about kind of disclosing this information or coming out, so to speak, is did it have an effect on your parents or family members? Because you not only disclosed for yourself in your own relationships, in a way you also disclosed for them in their relationships. So their neighbors, their brothers and sisters, maybe who didn't
Right,
know,
they were affected.
they now know. And I'm wondering, have either, and whether it's parents or other family members or even close friends, have any of them commented to you about any effect that they saw in this disclosure?
In ourselves or in it for them?
For them.
My dad actually, growing up, we didn't really talk about any of the stuff. And my dad, I remember one of the times at the hospital, he looked at me and he was like, you've changed who I am as a person. I used to be very judgmental, and he said, I mean, you look at you and you would never think you have this. And he was like, you helped me become a better, more open-minded person. And he now has people coming up to him and asking him, you know, how did you get Megan through this? And he's being asked advice just like I'm being asked advice, because it is difficult when you have a child who is struggling. And you don't really know what to do when you're in it, because you don't see as many resources you do if your kid has a disease that's tangible. I'm getting off topic.
No, that's okay. I mean, I personally, was any family effect? I mean, no, I'm going to have to say no. I mean, I don't have, won't go into too much detail. My family is not really very supportive. So I do struggle with that. You know, the reaction I got was, oh, you'll never get a job now, and all that stuff. It's still, the stigma was very internalized.
So actually, that's a good, it's a good segue into one of the questions that somebody asked.
Yeah.
Which is, what advice would you have for parents in helping a child with borderline personality disorder? So if a parent suspects their child has borderline personality disorder, what are some tips that might be most helpful?
I mean,
Do you want to think about it?
the thing that comes to mind for me, and I know I'm not a clinician, someday I want to get my master's in social work, but a lot of individuals with BPD have some kind of, 75% have some kind of childhood trauma history, you know, especially in terms of family, whether it be, you know, sexual abuse is very common and things like that. So just the fact that you're a caring parent who, like, I hate to say this, who gives a shit, is you're already ahead of the game.
Right.
Because a lot of us weren't blessed with very supportive families based on just numbers.
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of, I mean, I'm not
well,
not a clinician, but I think it speaks to the fact that, you know, some of us don't have great family upbringing and have struggled with things. So parents, if you're a parent that cares and asking about it, you're already, like, you're already there, basically.
Exactly. Yeah.
You know, if I had someone who wanted to help me in my family, close friends, that just means everything. Like, you're already doing
Right.
everything right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and if, say, for example, maybe you feel like as a family member you screwed up, or, you know, I hear this sometimes, or I must have caused this somehow. You know, work on that yourself, because if you try to reconcile those issues and try to heal yourself while also, you know, getting help for things that may or may not have contributed to the
Right.
development of a personality disorder,
Right.
you know, that will help if you kind of try to make amends with that. But if you're not lucky to, you know,
Yeah.
have that, do a lot of internal work.
So I was actually extremely fortunate to have supportive parents. And like she said, I've kind of learned through now, I have conversations every day with people about mental illness. And I've learned that a lot of people don't have that support. And those people that don't have the support, it makes it so much harder for them to pull themselves out of it. All you can do is be there for your loved one. For me, when I wasn't feeling great, just having my dad there, I would, for months on end, all day, every day, text him, telling him that I didn't want to be alive anymore. And he wouldn't send back these long messages. It would just be, I love you. You can get through today. The girls that you watch love you. We want you here. We would miss you if you weren't here.
It's very helpful, validation.
Right. And just, again, be there and have an open mind. I think we kind of talked about this earlier, that if you haven't experienced a mental illness yourself, it's very difficult to understand it, because it's not something that you can just see. It's not looking at a slide or like you see that you have cancer.
Yeah, to what I said earlier.
Right. So just have an open mind, and don't belittle their illness.
Yeah,
Things like,
I hear that a lot.
just calm down. Why are you even anxious about that? Like, I know the things that I'm anxious about are kind of right. I know that it's, yeah, and I understand that, but I can't change what my mind is worried about.
Unfortunately.
I had the picture of this little cartoon, so it's the same thing. So if would you say to someone who has a stomach bug, oh, just stop throwing up? Like, no, you wouldn't. So don't say to someone who's depressed or having anxiety, don't tell them, oh, you know, just like, you'll get over it.
I was told by a really close friend when I was here in the hospital, you're not trying hard enough to get better.
Yeah.
While I was here getting help.
Yeah.
So
I am trying.
It was really devastating to hear that.
Yeah.
And it just speaks to that, because you wouldn't really say that to anyone else. And people, you know, while well-intentioned, try to relate to you. I mean, maybe they have, you know, some shades of, you know, struggle, but I just remember hearing someone say something like, oh, maybe I'm depressed and I just don't know it, or, you know, I went on meds and I feel better, so I'm fine now.
Yeah.
And it's just frustrating, because it's not for, they're not doing it to hurt you intentionally.
Right.
They just
don't understand.
Lack of education.
That's why we're
There's
here.
nothing wrong with that. Yes, that's why we're here.
Yeah.
So, yeah, the trivializing of it is
Not
really upsetting to me.
Yeah.
You know, I was told by a family member recently, I use my mental and physical illnesses as an excuse not to try hard enough.
Yeah, I get that a lot when you cancel plans, and
it's because I don't push myself.
yeah,
But,
which is,
you know,
you have the days, again, where you struggle, and it's hard to get out of bed. But I try now to my best, those really bad days, to get up out of bed and go to work. It's just, for me, again, like when I was little, just getting to school for some reason was so difficult. And once I get there, I'm a lot better. Like we were talking before this started, I get really nervous before this stuff, and then it starts, and it kind of just all melts away. It's just the process of doing it is extremely difficult.
Yeah.
For me. And for you, you said.
Yeah, it's like stage fright, but in life.
Yeah.
Even though you've done this, had this interaction successfully 99 times before, it'll be that one time where they say they hate you and they're going to abandon you.
Right. So, resources? So my resources, if you guys are looking for things that have helped me, Headspace is this really amazing app that you can download on any of your smart devices. It provides a guided meditation. I like using it when I'm having a really bad anxiety attack. I generally have my bad panic attacks at the end of the day in my bed. And I've learned when that happens to get up out of my bed, go for a walk, and listen to these meditations. If I stay in my bed, you kind of associate your bed with having an anxiety attack. So helpful for me to get up, go for a walk, and listen to these guided meditations. And then Think app, this isn't one that I've used personally, but some parents that I know that have younger kids use it and love it. So you can record.
I've recommended this too.
You can record your voice as a parent saying affirmations or just a meditation with really relaxing music, and it helps kids that have anxiety. TheMighty.com.
The Mighty. I was just on it yesterday.
Yeah, it's awesome, and I find myself on the website and reading the articles, and I'm like, oh my God, yes, exactly, that's exactly how I feel.
There was one the other day that was 20 pictures, people with borderline personality disorder wish we could post on Facebook, but we can't.
Yeah.
And I can't, obviously, but
but I mean,
it's just, I have those pictures on my phone of me after like the worst episode. Like I basically threw an adult tantrum. And for some reason, I took a picture of it, and I'm just looking at this.
Yeah, same.
And I look broken.
Yeah.
I just wish people could see that side more. But like they said, we're not going to post it,
And this actually made me think of you, the book, the author Jenny Lawson, she has 2 awesome books. She, like Claire talked about, took it and made it funny, this really dark thing, depression and anxiety and any mental illness, and she brought light to it. I was crying laughing reading it, and
crying sad or just crying laughing?
Both, but more so laughing, and it's just amazing being able to kind of have a lighter note to it.
Yeah.
Did I talk about
definitely how I go. The Happiness Trap, how to...
Oh, the Happiness Trap, my doctor recommended this a few years ago. It's a guide to ACT. They have both a written book, and then they also have a book. It's the same information, but they have one that has like cartoons, and it's a lot easier to read. I've done both, but the cartoon one's good just if you're struggling to like open it up, and it has like a few things to do that day that will help you get through.
Oh, these are my resources, as well as the ones I use. So, like, to speak to like my semi-nerdy side, I do like Reddit.com. It's called the front page of the internet. I know it's so nerdy. That people don't like the interface, but it's basically just a user-generated content, sharing community. There are subreddits or communities, BPD, and BPD SOFA, which is Significant Others, Friends, Families, and Allies. And BPD is for, people with lived experience like we do, and anyone who wants to support. And the reason why I just only list those is because people come in and start trashing people with BPD. My BPDX destroyed my life.
Yeah.
Let me tell you all the reasons in 10 paragraphs. So it's just resources like that driven by the community, and like Facebook, you really need to use caution with, because sometimes you kind of get into a rabbit hole of reading the negative comments and hating yourself, and maybe I am like that, and I'm one of those people. But the support you can find there from connecting with other people all around the world, it makes you feel so much less alone. You just read it and you're like, they get me.
Yeah.
Perfect. So yeah, and then I'll skip down. So Instagram too. Those are just there's Abby Hilton. She's British and she has BPD and she does life coaching. The Bipolar Barbie, I know it's a funny name, but she's Australian, I think, and she just posts so much honest stuff about having BPD and bipolar disorder, and it's just, I want to be her friend, but she's all the way in Australia. And Body Posy Panda, I mean, this doesn't really apply to BPD, but I know I have an eating disorder history, and a lot of that's comorbid with borderline. So it just helps you feel better about yourself and try to give up that control.
Expectation.
And it's just inspirational. Like, love yourself the way you are because you're perfect. like I said, going on those two, the community that you can find out there on the internet, you know, is, while it can be like a rabbit hole of hating yourself,
That's a lot of good.
Wonderful. I wouldn't have found this campaign if not for, you know, the internet communities.
Right.
Apps, Calm, it's like Headspace. I just like it. I want to buy the paid version, maybe it's a birthday gift, wink, wink. It just has like nice sounds and rain falling
Soothing.
pictures.
Yeah.
Very soothing, and I gotta go listen to it now. I should have done it before. Okay, and as a musician, I had to put some songs on here. If you like Tovlo, you know her. She's done, Habit, Stay High, and also Lord's new album, the song Liability. So go on your Spotify, Apple Music now and listen, because I'm sure if you've heard them, you just listen to those songs and you're like, how do they not have BPD? I mean, maybe they do. It's not my business. But
Are you in my head?
yeah, it's just songs about feeling like you have to self-destruct, self-harm, you know, drink drugs, or you feel like a burden on everyone else. It's just, good stuff. Gonna flare it in my car on the way home. And finally, I said Wikipedia and Google, because sometimes you need to refresh yourself on the hard, cold facts and research and what's on the cutting edge of, you know, BPD treatment, what's next.
Right, and it goes back to what you can do as a parent. Educate yourself. Go out and get these books. You have a right in your hand. Type in borderline personality
What if they don't
how
have
it can
a smartphone?
help. Go to the library. I don't know. And then this poem actually
Oh my
is
God, I
one
love this.
of my favorites. Should I read it? So, I walk down the street, there's a deep hole in the sidewalk, I fall in. I am lost, I am helpless, it isn't my fault, it takes forever to find a way out. I walk down the same street, there's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I pretend I don't see it, I fall in again, I can't believe I'm in the same place. But it isn't my fault, it still takes a long time to get out, excuse me. I walk down the same street, there's a deep hole in the sidewalk, I see it still there. I still fall in as a habit. My eyes are open, I know where I am. It is my fault, I get out immediately. I walk down the same street, there's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I walk around it. I walk down another street. So I saw this in my doctor's office, and it's just, like, again, yes. Like I talked about, I did this so many times before I actually learned how to go around the hole, not walk directly into it. Like,
Still try.
yeah, I mean, I still sometimes walk into the hole,
Under
but
construction.
yeah, but not as many holes.
What, you know, I think one of the burning questions for a lot of people watching is when somebody's stuck in that pattern of walking down the street, falling in the hole over and over and over again, what helps people, like, what was it for you, either personally or did somebody do something or say something that made the difference, that was a wake-up call, or that changed the way your perspective?
It has to come from yourself.
Yeah.
And that's the most frustrating part, because, you know, for most parents, or almost all parents, you know, to see your child struggling, I assume, is a helpless feeling. And I know, you know, people who are parents who are struggling with their children, you know, dealing with mental illness, and it's a lot of guilt, it's a lot of, what did I do to cause this, and I can't help them. And sometimes even for older children, anyone, you can't force anyone to want to get help, and that must be so frustrating, because you have to want it for yourself.
Yeah, and I think going back to what worked for me, they tried many times to put me in, and again, it didn't really work until I wanted to. But the things that they did that helped me was, there was so many times where I hated them. I can remember one time they had me admitted, and I was screaming the worst things you could ever say to your parents. I was saying to them, and I came at them with so much anger, and they never once came back at me with anger. They came back with love every single time. And I can't imagine how hard that must be, to have someone that you love saying these awful things to you, and kind of just swallowing it and taking it and telling them that you love them. I think that's a good
No,
rule
I
in
agree with
general. Respond to hate with love. When your kid's struggling, again, support is the best thing that you can do for them. And there are going to be the times where they hate you. I will never forget my dad. If I was screaming that I hated him and wished that he was dead, that look, he was just standing there crying, and I just wanted to make him feel so bad the way I felt. And he swallowed it, and he took it, and he told me he loved me, which is
that would have been helpful.
very difficult.
I had something like that,
Yeah.
I hate to
No, but
say that, but it's just having a lot of having a lot of experience with people doing and saying things that are textbook, what not to do, has just shown me things like that. That's how you can best support someone living with mental illness. I mean, there's no handbook for being a parent, so you feel like I'm sure they must feel like, what the hell am I doing here? Like, is this even working? Am I making a difference?
And if you're having those questions,
then you're doing the right thing.
Right. Just ask yourself, am I doing everything that I can to support them? And if that answer is yes, then you're doing the right thing.
Yeah. I always try to tell that to people I see, like I said, I know several parents who, have children with, struggle with mental illness, and I just say, you're doing a good job. And then it's always, no, I'm not, because there's always the thought, what else can I do? I need to make this better. I need to fix this. And it's just the fact that you're caring and getting them help is, like I said, 99% of the way there, because that's what's going to make the difference. And I just tell them, you're doing a good job. No, I'm not. It says you care.
Yeah.
You're making an effort. That's doing a good job. That's being a good parent.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, we are out of time.
No.
But I want to really thank both of you for such a helpful webinar and for sharing your thoughts and perspectives and experiences and resources that you found helpful. And I really can't applaud you both enough for your bravery in terms of the Deconstructing Stigma campaign and this webinar, because I really think you are helping countless people around the world by getting the word out and by coming out, so to speak.
Yeah, talking about it.
And so thank you both very much.
Thank you.
For anybody else who wants to register for our next webinar, you'll see information there on the screen, and I will